7 minutes.
7 minutes? We could do a bunch of shorts. No, let's try and do like 20 minutes, and then if there's more, then we can go more. Because like I often find with these things that I'm like, oh, okay, I'll just be talking about a sports book or something like that. I can do that in 10 minutes. But there's a lot to go over, right? And so when you start getting into it, it's like, okay, I could either speak really fast and skip things or just slow down and put it all out. So, okay. So we want to talk about integration. Why don't I just start by introducing you?
Okay.
Right?
That's a good start.
Okay. Hey everyone, welcome back to the iGaming experience. I'm your host, Sam Bhatti, and not in the Zebra Studios as I normally am. I'm actually at my home here in Tivat, Montenegro, and I have with me my business partner, Strahinja Radman, who is also my colleague, on every project that I work on, but currently with Bet Hero. And we'll talk more about you and your background, but I would just simply introduce you as the best engineering mind that I've ever worked with, and I think the best in the industry. So,
well, thank you.
Take that.
Thank you. That's those are the big shoes to fill, but thank you.
Mm-hmm. Very welcome. Very welcome. So, I mean, Strax, like, by the way, his name is Strahinja, but he's, we found some of our international colleagues find that difficult to pronounce. So, he goes by Strax pretty often.
Yes.
So I might refer to him as Strax sometimes. That's not I guess it is an inside thing. It's a nickname.
Yeah.
All right. So, today we're here to talk about integrations, right? Which is, one of the biggest parts of iGaming, right, is to connect a system to multiple other systems to be able to accomplish all the fun, cool things that you can with an iGaming platform. You've gone through all different types of integrations, right? You've led them, you understand them on a very intimate level, very high level, very technical level. But as you know, this podcast is for beginners. This is for people that know very little about it. So, as you like to do with me, keep it as broad as possible so that so that our people can get a good high level understanding of what integrations are, how they work, what a typical integration might be.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah. So in its most basic form, the integrations is basically two systems communicating with each other and performing some actions automatically. So think of it like a phone call. I basically call you, I give you some information, then you take some action.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
It's as simple as that.
That makes sense. All right. And so to bring it right into iGaming, right? Because that's a good general for any type of integration. I did do an episode where I explained what an iGaming platform is. I'll try and link that somewhere now. But so if you have no idea what an iGaming platform is, it might be good to go back and check that out. But the idea is, sorry, Snoop, you all right, buddy? The dog's having an attack. So to bring it right back to iGaming and an iGaming platform, maybe you could break down for us like what that looks like. What would be like a typical set of integration? So you've got your main platform, which is yeah, I mean, you know what? Why don't we even start with that?
It's the platform is a very complicated organism, right? It consists of multiple parts, just like your body, for example, and usually it cannot work without these parts. So think of the platform as a head, and then all of these other parts are basically legs and your body and your hands that are allowing it to perform everything that it needs for satisfaction of the players. So, for example, Sportsbook in itself is a very complicated system. It needs a lot of data. It needs a lot of real-time interactions, and if you want to have a sports book, building one is very complex beast.
Right.
So it would make much more sense if somebody already built it, you can just connect your platform with the sportsbook and then offer the sportsbook to the players, right?
Okay. So, well, in fact, that might be the best thing to start with then. So, a platform, when I say a platform, that can actually mean many things.
Yeah.
So let's just keep it super basic. And, if I was to say to you, Strax, I need to integrate a sportsbook with my platform, like, what does that actually mean? How does that work?
So you basically have some basic functionality on your platform, and by the platform, that's player management. Think ability to register players, ability to let them log in, to do something with their profile, to be able to deposit money, to be able to withdraw. But that's also another integration.
Yeah, I'll just interrupt you for 1 second. I want you to keep going with that train of thought, so please don't let me totally derail you. But just for the newbies, what Strax just described is often referred to as a PAM, which stands for Player Access Management, or a CRM, which is Customer Resource Management. And it's a little bit ambiguous as to what exactly those things mean, but people have a slightly different criteria to call something a PAM versus a CRM. But for newbies, just know that what he's referring to is just a way to keep track of all your players, a database.
Yeah.
Now, sorry, please carry on with the sportsbook integration.
Of course, that's not the only thing that Fun Platform has. But if you want to offer some ability for your players to have fun, you want them to wager on real life sports events, right?
Mm-hmm.
So sportsbook is one component that your system needs in this particular case. And could you build your own? Yes, you can, but you would need a lot of logistics in the background in order to make that happen. So it's much easier to just integrate one. And that basically means that sportsbook has a particular way that it gives data to you,
mm-hmm.
and that it needs some data from you in order to work. So integration is basically conforming and syncing these two systems together, so coupling them in a sense,
mm-hmm.
In order to provide wagering capabilities to your players.
Okay, understood. So if I was to say, hey, I have a sports book that I want integrated into the platform, like, what are the steps that you would be taking to make that happen? Like, let's demystify this for people, because I think even people that work in the industry for years, if they're not part of the tech team, then it seems kind of magical to say, okay, you're going to take whatever they've made and then connect it to what we have, and then suddenly they work together. So, like, really on a high level, like, what's like the top 3 or 5 steps that you would take if your CPO or your head of product or whoever from above is saying, here's the sportsbook for you to integrate. We've signed a deal.
Yeah. So at the most highest level, you would first see how their system works. So how is their system giving data to you? So basically, using the phone analogy, it would be somebody calls you, tells you, okay, today we have Liverpool and Manchester playing. We have 1x2 market, and these are the odds for each way, right? For every outcome. And then it would go on and tell you all of these other matches that it has. You would present this to your players, right? That's the action that you would take. And your players would then say, okay, I want to bet on Liverpool versus Manchester. I bet that Liverpool is going to win. And then you would take that wager, send it to the sportsbook, and tell them, okay, like, this player said that Liverpool is going to win the match. So record this on your side and let us know what the outcome is. Okay,
cool. This is good. You're getting very specific on the flow of it here. I like that. I think that's like easy for me to follow. So I assume it's easy for everyone else to follow as well. Okay, and so got that part of it now. So how it works when you have the product, added to your platform, uh, and then like give us a couple of like technical terms now. Were we talking like API here?
Yeah, so basically we're talking about the API, which is a way to relay some information to the other system,
Yeah,
right?
API stands for
Application Programming Interface.
Application Programming Interface.
Yes.
So you probably, if you're new to iGaming or really any company that has some type of technology team, you've probably heard API before. And if you don't know what it means, Application Programming Interface, very simply, I usually describe it as like a bridge between two systems, the
Yes.
actual connection. And sometimes that bridge is a one-way street, and sometimes it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
Right.
So usually you send some information, you relay some information, and the other party says, "Okay, I've received this, and I'm okay to proceed." Right.
Yeah. Okay. And then to really demystify it though, right? So you've got this API. Like, what does that actually look like? Is that like 1,000 lines of code? Is that 20 lines of code? What are we talking about here? Like, you're going to your developer now and saying, integrate this. What does he do?
Well, it depends. It hugely depends on the on the system that you're integrating it with, right?
Okay.
And one of the things is that it's not making it work, right? That's the easy part. The hard part is making it work reliably.
Ah, good. Okay, it's a good distinction.
Because there are multiple things that can go wrong, right? You could have like imagine if somebody like calls you twice to book a slip.
Okay.
And I call you twice. So do you book 2 slips, or do you say, "Oh, you already booked it, so I'm not going to book it again"?
Right. Okay.
So these are some of the complexities that arise while creating these systems, and usually you also need redundancy. So if one connection fails, then you need to go through to the other connection, for example.
Okay.
So the integrating it, that's one part, right? But keeping it reliable is another part. And the third part is keeping it secure, right? Because if when I'm calling you, for example, to book a ticket, you can say, I recognize Strahinja, I recognize his number, I recognize his voice, so it's easy for you to validate that I'm calling you. But if somebody else would call you, then you would say like, "Oh, I don't know who this guy is, and I'm not going to take this ticket.
Right.
I'm not going to book it." Right.
Exactly. So we have to have ways to validate and establish trust.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So these are the pillars that are very important when you're doing the integrations.
Right. Okay. And then like just to circle back then. So on like the Sportsbook integration, let's say it's like a somewhat standard API connection. One of the things that we found, I think that everyone would agree with here, is like when you're integrating with someone on both sides, one of the most valuable things you can have is good documentation.
Exactly.
Right? Which is, I think, a more technical way of saying instructions, right? Like how to actually do this, right? Yeah. So one of the first steps, I think, when you're dealing with a third party is an exchange of documentation.
Exactly.
Right, between the two of you. And then maybe like, can you take it from there? So like say you've just received documentation from like a super popular sports book. You're on a new platform, and BetB wants to be integrated, and they've handed you the documentation. So what's the breakdown there on a high level?
So usually what the documentation says is, this is how our system works, this is what we are going to provide, and this is what we expect in return for everything to work properly. Right? So they would say, okay, this is how we give you the data, for example, for different matches. And that's usually the easy part, right? Because you're just ingesting the data. But a little bit more, not really complicated, but the part that usually takes more time to integrate is booking the tickets. Because in a sports book, as you know, you can try to book a ticket, but that ticket needs to be validated first. and it can be rejected, right? Because if you're betting on a live match, then the sportsbook needs time to validate. Do you have maybe some insider information and things like these, so they can cancel the ticket. So the complexity comes from you need to reserve the funds first on the platform. Right. So you basically put them aside. The user cannot use them for that duration. And then only when the sportsbook validates the ticket, they can say, okay, like confirm this transaction. So at that point in time, the funds are debited from your account, and you can no longer use them.
Right.
So one of these things is getting through. So the integration, basically the complex part, is getting around all of these peculiarities. And usually what it says in the documentation is how do you, what steps do you need to do in order to encompass all of the possible cases that the user can end up in.
Right. Okay, got it. And in fact, something that we need to put a pin in and remember is, because you brought up live betting, and I've not really discussed that much on this podcast, but I would love for us in a future episode, I think it's too big of a can of worms now, but to break that down as well, because it's a completely different beast, pre-match versus live betting. Exactly. And you mentioned briefly there about there's a delay before the bet can get booked, but we'll get into the complexities of that when we get to maybe one for the more intermediate listeners, right? And once the newbies have grown up and listened to the first 20 episodes, and then we can move on to that one.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Right on. So we have touched a lot on the sportsbook specific example of an integration. So maybe let's try and relate this a little bit to the other major component of an online sportsbook and casino, which is the casino part. And quite frankly, it's by far the more popular of the integrations. You'll have many brands that have no sportsbook at all. That's quite common, and that they would only have a casino offering. Whereas I don't know of any brands that only have sportsbook. They would always have, I think, a little bit of casino as well. So let's talk a little bit about iGaming specific, like casino integrations, right? Like there are kind of two main types. So maybe I'll let you talk about that.
So casino is a little bit easier, to be honest. It's you ask for a list of games, they return you the list of games. So you make an API call, you get a response.
Okay, so we're API again here.
We're API, yeah. And then you present this list to your customers. They open up a game. You create a session. So you make another call to create a session. And afterwards, it's just debit credit. So these are the two actions that are happening mainly in the background. So when you click a spin, it's a debit. If you win, they call you to say, okay, the guy won.
Great. And this follows really well with the phone call analogy, actually. Yes. We're just saying API, but it's literally a call. And that's the technical term as well.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So, and then I guess the two different types that I was thinking of, at least, was like going direct to the game supplier versus an aggregator.
Yes.
Right. So just to very briefly explain, an aggregator is exactly what it sounds. It aggregates a ton of different brands, and it allows you to access thousands of games, dozens of different game suppliers via one master API, right? One integration.
Exactly. Yeah. So every there is no specific standard when it comes to integrations, right? Every company, it follows a similar set of rules, a similar set of patterns, but there is no one document that says like this is the standard, this is how it has to be. Every system has its own peculiarities.
Which is why, by the way, you have to be such a knowledgeable and experienced engineer to actually be able to integrate a ton of iGaming products. It seems like it would be straightforward, but as you just said, there's no rules.
There's no rules. And the aggregator basically allows you to do just one integration, but in the background you have like a plethora of games, plethora of suppliers that you can use.
Right. And then the alternative is to go direct to the game supplier.
Yes. So that's a balance, but the commercial balance, right? Because aggregator gives you specific commercials, right?
Yep.
A little bit higher commercials, but it gives you the ability to just do one integration. And if you want to have like better commercials, then you would go multiple integrations,
right?
But then again, that's a higher development cost, maintainability cost, and et cetera, right?
Yeah. In fact, that's also something that's not been properly broken down on this podcast, but will at some point, is that commercial aspect that you just mentioned. But like very briefly, typically, if you've got a decent amount of traffic, you can go to some of these larger game suppliers, or even or the smaller ones, and get deals with them where the rev share that you have with them is lower than it might be going through an aggregator. And as Strahinja said, it's a lot more work on the technical side, the compliance side, the administrative side. But depending on your business, that juice could be worth the squeeze. For most new operators, it's not. It makes more sense to go with an aggregator like a Hub 88 or a Soft Swiss and just get everything in one go.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. So that, on a high level, gives the casino side of things. We've only been talking about APIs. Is there anything else that maybe people outside the tech team would have heard about, but maybe don't know what they are? And like we could demystify that a little bit, like, webhooks, for example.
Yes. So the webhooks are the first one that comes to mind. And it's basically another system calling you to tell you something.
Simple.
Yes.
Right. So you could say, instead of using a landline, maybe they're coming through mobile.
Yeah.
Right. Just a different route for a message.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool. And then anything else specific? Like, we've got APIs, webhooks. Those are kind of the major ones that come in.
Yeah. And then there is data that is like the format that is being used. I mean, some other providers are using the remote procedure calls, for example, but those are much rarer. They are a little bit, I would say, maybe they have a little bit bigger entry learning curve for developers, but in the end, they pay off because they do not let you make mistakes easily. So it's they're much stricter, and they do not let you dance around too much, while the other formats are much more forgiving, like JSON, and they allow you to send basically anything.
I see. Okay, cool. Thank you. I hope that's clear. All right, so one last section that I would like to touch on, because I think that this would help demystify a lot for people, is why don't we explain the difference, or the key differences between an iframe and a web view and a direct integration. All right, so these terms might not have floated around your office, but if you're anywhere near the tech team and you work for a white label platform or have your own technology, then these things certainly come up. So drop it on us.
So iFrame is basically another web page that you put on your site, and most of the casino games are operating in that way.
Okay, that's an important point. Most games are like that.
Yeah. Right. So imagine that in your website, you basically add a full-blown Google page within it. So that's an iframe. It's basically just a window into another web page.
Right. So and typically when you would see this on an iGaming site, a lot of the user interface, the UI, around the sides and around the top, like the navigation and your main stats and your profile, would still be managed by the operator, and they just open a little window in there for this iframe to show up.
Yes.
right? And then that iframe is hosted elsewhere,
Exactly.
right? By whatever third party is providing
Exactly. Yes.
that game or content.
The supplier. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So that iframe, WebView.
WebView is something that is more native to the mobile, I would think, and this is something that you would open up in Android or iOS application.
So I think for newbies purposes, or people that that aren't super technical, we just call it an iframe for apps.
Basically, yes.
Right. Okay. Cool. All right. And then, so then, what's a direct integration? What does that mean?
Direct integration would basically be something that the integrated product becomes a part of your stack. But by that, I mean, it is part of your application. It is not a view in your application that is showing something else. It is basically a part of your application. Think of it like in a human body analogy, iframe would basically be a robotic arm, right?
Right.
So it's something that is added an extension to you. But the direct integration or a real integration will basically be a human arm.
Okay.
So it behaves and it looks like it's a part of the body. It's in your system. It's.
Oh, I love the circle backs to the analogies. I do. I love that a lot. And I would say in an iGaming, like for a very simple real life example, like there are some sports books that offer an iframe where you can just inject their full UI, which is very normal, right? You see that quite a bit with BetB, for example, is probably the more popular one. Shout out BetB, the second time they get a call out in this podcast. Yeah. It's my favorite sports book. It's a great sports book. But a direct integration would be if a sports book was to just give you all of the data and you create your own interface and then display that data and have all the interactivity through that.
Yeah, that much is like much more complex.
Okay, great.
In an iframe, yeah.
There's one more term that I know I said that was the last sort of thing, but just one more term because it's related. Can you please explain to people what an SDK is? And I'm sure that people have seen those three letters, that acronym together, and I would imagine most people don't know what it stands for and what it's for.
So it's short of software development kit, and it is basically like somebody giving you a full Lego set and telling you how to assemble it in the shape that you want.
Okay.
Basically, yeah.
Right. Okay. And then in iGaming stance, or from an iGaming perspective, that Lego or that whatever structure that you made would also slot perfectly into your Lego platform that you've built, and there's a nice little spot that it's been designed to sit there perfectly.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so that's an SDK, and I think like typically, what's happening is if you're going for an integration with someone, a third party, they may offer that as a way to integrate, and from usually the integratee, the person that's doing the integration, receiving the technology, that is usually thought to be like not so difficult of a lift as opposed to other parts of other ways to directly integrate.
The SDK?
Yeah.
So this is basically me giving you all the tools that you need to do that efficiently, easily.
Right.
So I basically create everything, and you just like use it. In contrast of you building everything yourself.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you. That's fantastic. All right, and then we're coming up to like 30 minutes. So I told you that we would do this for 20 minutes. See, I told you, right? You get going, there's more to say, right? But I do want us to just very briefly touch on the project that we're currently working on right now, which is Bet Hero, which is integrations were very much at the forefront of it when we sat down to map this all out. And as I said, Strahinja, like I'm not just blowing smoke. I've said this to you a million times. He's a very smart man and a top engineering mind. Absolutely. And so what, from the jump, we considered what it's going to be like for others to be integrating this technology from our side. So can you just talk for a moment about like some of the steps we took to make Bet Hero, the easiest technology you'd be able to integrate in iGaming right now?
Well, basically, we created the documentation that explains every step and every possible scenario that can happen, and made sure that the other parties understand what is going to happen in that particular case, what is required from them and what is required from us.
No surprises.
No surprises, no.
Fantastic.
We basically try to define everything from the messages, the data that is going to be shared, and things like this, so that there is no ambiguity. Because the ambiguity is that something that leads to more questions, and then that leads to more communication, longer testing periods. So the more that you define it, the more that it is explicit, that reduces the amount of burden, because somebody can just sit down and integrate it quickly and not think twice about it.
Amazing. And then what I love too is I think all of the methods that we've just gone over for the previous 30 minutes are on offer with this product as well. So if you want to integrate Bet Hero as an iframe or as a web view, if you want an SDK, if you want to go API, we've not only have thought of that, but that's prepared it. And as you said, probably the most important thing with all this, it's well documented.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Good job, sir.
Thank you.
Right on. All right. Anything else you want to say about integration, sir?
No, I think that I've...
Or anything else?
I hope that the iGaming experience crowd is going to learn a lot of things. We do dedicate our life to learning and to becoming better and ever evolving. So I hope that our listeners are going to learn and to reach new heights.
100%. Can you see why this guy's my partner? Right? That's what I'm talking about. All right. Well, hvala brate. Thank you very much for joining the podcast. Finally, I've been trying to get you on for a while, and you've committed to coming back. Yeah. All right. We got that on video. Thanks everyone for checking out this episode of the iGaming Experience. I think it was a super fun one. I'm your host, Sam Bhatti. This is my partner, Strahinja Radman. And thank you all for checking it out. Catch you in the next one.
Bye-bye.
And we're done.
Yeah, good.
See? That was fun, right?